Hi, Minesh Baxi here, and I'm really excited because my good friend is here today. And most of you know I published 12 different books, including Stop Hiring Losers, Million Dollar Team Secrets, Network Your Way to $100,000 and Beyond. I've been a business coach for 23 years, but my favorite role is to be a parent. And I know somebody who's a fantastic role model as a parent, and what he teaches his children, how he teaches just by doing it and repeatedly training them is my good friend, Ben Wilson. Ben, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. It's always good to spend time with you, and I appreciate you having me on for this because this is probably one of my favorite topics as well, right?
Exactly. Well, we have a lot of things we can do, but God designed us for legacy. That's what I personally believe. And there is nothing better legacy than the next generation, right?
That's
To
right.
invest in. And I think you are a great example of what you have done. So, for those who don't know much about the famous Ben Wilson in my vocabulary, but tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, etc.
Yeah, well, we'll start off with the kids. I have two kids, and we're talking about parenting today. I have two kids that they're spectacular, obviously, because I'm their parent, and it's awesome, and we get to do so many cool things together. But they're 22 and 19. My son, he graduated from college in May, got married in May, and he turned pro as a professional golfer about 3 months ago. And so that's going to be a fun journey for him. And then my daughter's 19, so she's a sophomore in college, and she's at the University of Tennessee and just doing spectacular. And I'm so proud of her, what she's done, how they have worked their butts off to become and continue to become the best versions of themselves. Been married 24 years. It'll be 25 years coming up in here just a few more months. That's a huge accomplishment, more for her than me, because she had to put up with me along the way. And but we've had a good time. We've had a great run. Even in the worst of times, man, it's been a blast because somebody told me this a long time ago. Leaders are learners. And when I heard that, I was like, it's so true. I must be a phenomenal leader because I feel like I'm learning a lot every day. And we live here in Nashville. We've raised both of our kids here and up in just on the outskirts in a little bedroom community called Mount Juliet here in Nashville for their entire lives, and love it. I have a real estate company. I have a law firm and a title company. I have an investment firm as well, and then we just started a coaching and consulting firm, and so lots of things going on, lots of beauty going on. I got some great relationships and partnerships that I get to hang out with every day, and we live life with each other, and we do a little work along the way. Um, yeah. And this next year, one of the cool things I'll share with you is my son, when he decided to turn professional, he asked me to caddy for him. So I'm going to get the honor for this next year to caddy for him. I've already caddied 3 tournaments for him, and I will tell you this: I'm going to love the next year, but it's only going to be a year because I was not designed as a father to be told what to do by my son for 5 hours straight. But we're gonna have a blast though. We're gonna have a great time.
Well, that's obviously tells me about how close your son is and how he appreciates your golf knowledge as well, because a caddy is not just a one-way street. A caddy
No,
also has a lot of input in the success of the golfer as well. So congratulations on your son turning pro
thank you.
and also for you having that relationship. And I'm sure your daughter, she's in Knoxville, I'm assuming. Is that what you're
She
saying?
is. Yeah, she's in Knoxville and she's up there with a mutual friend, and his daughter's the same age as my daughter, so they get to all kind of hang out and get to know each other. It's a lot of fun. What's funny, Manesh, is she went to University of Tampa originally, which is a much smaller school, right? And she thought she wanted this small, kind of more intimate, private setting. And she went down there and it was just miserable, right? Just absolutely, it was not a good situation for her. And she came back, and we did not think she was ready for the big school, right? And she comes back, and man, she got there. And from the first week, she has just been thriving. And as a parent, there's nothing better than seeing your kids thrive.
Exactly. When they find their home is when we are excited, right?
That's right.
Are personally feeling comfortable. They do a lot of different things, and it's interesting, from that perspective. So the focus on this conversation is very simple about, as a parent, what have you done or what are you doing? Maybe good and bad. If you have some lessons on the way about influencing them in areas of giving values, in the area of career, in the area of money. So I'll leave it as a broad point. And I
Okay.
know you've been doing a great job of engaging with them to set their goals and everything else in life.
Yeah. It's funny because there's no book, there's no script, there's no policy and procedure manual for having your kids. And then when you have multiple kids, there's certainly, I mean, the dynamic just continues to just get muddier and muddier, right? Until you come up with something that was given to me. There's nothing I'm going to share today that's new or I created or I manifested. It's all stuff I learned from people who I thought were great parents, who I thought were great role models, who were great mentors. And one of the first one was my father, and this is something I passed on to my kids. Is my father was always very straight up with me. There was never maybe, there was never beating around the bush. There was never no time that we spent in Graytown. It was always black and white, right? And for my kids, I wanted life because life can be black and white, although the world tries to make it very gray, right? And my dad was like, make your yeses be yes and your no's be no, right? And you can only make your yeses be yes and your no's be no if you have clear standards. So from a very early age, we were very clear with our children on the standards that we expected from them. And they weren't Manesh, they weren't like over the top complicated. They're very simple, but necessary standards. Like, I'll give you an example. One of our standards, and I think is one of the most important, is simply show up. If you've committed to something, right? If you have a responsibility to something, if you have said yes to something, just show up. I'll give you, kind of fast forward. They fought me on this all the time. They're like, oh, we got to show, how kids do. Oh, we got to show. My kids, all they've done thus far, different from all their friends, all they did when they started college is they went to every class because I gave them a story about when I failed. The only poor grade I got in all of college was to a college that I got A's on all the tests, all the exams, everything, but I didn't show up, and it was 25% of my grade. I just showed up for the big stuff. And this was a great lesson that I had to learn the hard way. And I told my kids, I said, if you just simply show up in college, right, you will do so much better than you could have ever imagined. And just by simply showing up, my son was very clear. He graduated, and he graduated with a 4.0. And he says, Dad, 90% of me getting a 4.0 was not my intellect, was not how well written I am. It was just that I showed up. I showed up. And so that was one of the first ones. And then we went on and we have 7 family non-negotiables or standards, and that we has started that very young with them, and we pounded it into them for many years. And now it's funny listening to them share it with their friends. But that was one of the biggest things that I think that as parents, my wife and I got a chance to take from my parents, my dad specifically, to make our yeses yes and our nos no based upon a set of standards that were super clear.
Well, now that you mentioned 7 non-negotiables, now you're intriguing me, obviously. I think I've heard
Sure.
a couple of them before, but could you summarize them so
Yeah.
that people who are watching, listening can
Yeah.
see how they can incorporate something like that in their lives?
Absolutely. So for mine, when these hit home, when they came and they were given to me, these are the standards that not only give me the most energy, but they're the ones that I have watched through the test of time that just always outweigh all other standards, right? And so number one is show up. I shared that. Number two is be consistent, right? I don't like drama. I don't like highs and lows. And I mean, we all have people in our lives that are going to have drama and highs and lows. I like consistent. My wife is consistent. My son is consistent. My daughter is consistent, right? But consistency was number one. Number two is just, or number three is have a great attitude for us. Just have a great attitude, right? You've heard the saying, attitude dictates altitude, right? And it's just true. If you just think positive, positive things will come, right? What you think about will come about. But having a great attitude is so indicative of so much beauty in your life. Being committed for the long haul. Everyone wants instant gratification, right? When you start to have delayed gratification in your life and you accept or understand or appreciate delayed gratification, that's when the true fulfillment of life, I think, starts to happen, right? Because the only way to truly, in my opinion, to be fulfilled is to grow every day and to be generous. And if I'm growing every day in some aspect of my life that I value, and I'm generous with the things that I do have of value, I'm going to feel fulfilled. But it takes a long time to create value, right? It takes a long time to get yourself into a position to understand that. The next one is being faithful and passionate in life. And that means you believe in something greater than yourself, period. You do not believe that you are the almighty authority in your world, right? And so if you have an authority in your life, they're going to tell you things that you don't understand, that you've never experienced. And so having faith is super important. And if you understand that faith is a beautiful thing, right? When you're following something that's worth following, or following a circumstance, or following, for me, following Christ, right? That gives me hope and faith in so many beautiful things. And when I understand that, beauty comes from it. The next is making sure that you're willing and you understand, because it's a framework, that there's a price to be paid for anything that's great in your life. There's always a price. If you want to have great kids, there was a price, right? If you want to have a great relationship with your wife, there's a price, right? There's a sacrifice. And then the final thing is that we do the right thing, even if it sucks. We have integrity. We do the right thing. And I applaud, and I believe this wholeheartedly, is that you have to reward what you want repeated. You know, someone who's super smart and understanding the psychology of people, that being you, you have to reward what you want repeated. And so when our kids step up and man up and make tough choices, like being honest, kids, for whatever reason, I watch these kids and they just naturally are comfortable to lie all the time, right? Or bend the truth or manipulate a circumstance. So we always applauded our kids, even if they had consequences to follow. We always celebrated and applauded our kids for doing the right thing, because it's hard. And those are the 7 things that we focus on. Those are our 7 non-negotiables.
Well, those are excellent for anybody to follow, and doesn't just apply to kids, obviously, right? It applies to every individual. And like you said, show up is the first place. If you don't show up, you're 100% chance of losing, right? And every chance you don't take, you automatically don't get, right? It's that
Exactly
simple.
right.
And I think your examples there were perfect from that perspective. And so those are the philosophical points of view. And again, I agree with pretty much everything you are saying. Example is because luckily enough, my children, my wife, my kids, we've all been very much ingrained, thanks to influence from people like you and all the other people that I've been surrounded by, to follow Christ. So my daughter was a narrator at a Daytona Baptist church for the nativity scene, and this is a huge church. You go on a truck for 30 minutes to see the whole scenes, right?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she's 20, which is close to the ages of yours. So she's good at speaking in general, but the more important part is doing that in really reinforces the values that they are. My son is helping out as a volunteer in the audio video tech in the church that we belong to as well. So from those things makes my job easier, because I just say, hey, it's okay to make Papa mad, but it is not okay to make Jesus mad.
That's right. That's right. And it's so true. And it's so true. And when they realize that there is a responsibility that's bigger than themselves to something, and as Christ followers, to having this relationship and then sharing without apology or anything, this beautiful relationship, gosh, the freedom that comes with that is just awesome. Now the potential blossoms for our children, right? Because that's a hard thing to do in this society. Everybody wants to tippy toe, right? And it's very hard to do. and everybody gets offended, and you can't go on social media, you can't have a conversation.
Yeah.
Crap, I was walking through my country club yesterday, walking through, had a private conversation with someone. It was a beautiful conversation, and the people sitting at the bar wanted to pull me over and give me their opinion. And I was like, I mean, I, everybody wants to engage into, in my opinion, diluting what I think is just amazing. And that is when we choose to give our power, our authority, our strength over to someone else who makes us greater and pulls out the potential for us. Right.
Exactly. I
Mm-hmm.
totally agree with you. And anyway, it's interesting. We can talk about that. So now
Sure.
that you've given us the philosophy of the process here, let's talk about some practical tips that
Yeah.
you have been able to use to help your children.
Absolutely. The first one that I can share with you that's fun, that we're just now coming out to where my kids were seeing it at a high level with our children. And once again, these are proud moments to get through there, the sacrifice to get to the philosophical portion of it. It was very difficult, but we made our children pull weeds. We have a lot of landscaping at our house, and we made our children pull weeds from the time that they could walk and talk, right? And it started off, they were with their mom and dad when they were young, and so it was fun, right? They were doing, and then as they got older, it wasn't so much fun. And then as they got mature, then it really wasn't fun. And then when they got to high school, right, and they started to have this dynamic shift of figuring out who they wanted to be and who they were, the last thing they wanted to be was someone who pulls weeds, right? And that was something that was very tactical and very intentional on my wife and I's part to teach our kids that in order to have great things in life, there comes a great responsibility. And those responsibilities means that you have to get your hands dirty. You cannot ever be afraid of getting your hands dirty. And so we use that. We use that on a lot of different fronts. And to see my kids now, which have beautiful circumstances in life, just like your kids, they have a lot of resources at their fingertips. They don't live the normal life. They haven't really ever experienced true struggle. You know what I mean? To see how hard they work, right? And the effort and their willingness. Like my daughter just the other day, 19 years old, she's come in here and there's like a few little crumbs that someone had left in our house, and she went in and got the dustpan and the broom and was sweeping it up. Like a year ago, she wasn't doing that, Minesh. And I truly believe it was because of that one very intentional tactic that we use to teach our kids how to work. Another one is one that you and I've talked about quite a bit. And we started goal setting, like writing down and goal setting with our children. And we started that very early. I was somebody that playing sports, we had to pay attention to what our goals or what our ultimate outcomes were, right? What our desired outcomes. And so as I got further along, I was taught these beautiful techniques and tactics on how to do that, not just for myself or my business, but also for my kids. And so we go through what we call our five F's, or the 5-star life. And that is faith, family, fitness, right? Our future and our finances. And we go through two phases of it. The first phase is we write out two extremely frustrating things that we need to own. We can't blame. We can't try to deflect or act like it's someone else's fault or anything like that. But two big time frustrations or failures or mistakes that we have made in each one of those areas that we have to own. And then once we've identified those things and owned it, then I think we have the permission to slide over and talk about what we want to establish for the future. What specific goals that we can measure, that we can be intentional, we can put timelines to in each one of those 5 areas. And we write out those goals. When they were kids, it was, I want to read, in AR, they had AR when they were in elementary school. They wanted to read so many books, right, during the summer, right? My son, he had 1 year for fitness. He wanted to do so many sit-ups every day, right? And we would count those sit-ups. And then they got bigger and better and more intentional and more relevant, right? But I've watched my kids be able to go back, and we look at them every month. So that's another tactical piece. We do that on January 1st. Matter of fact, even I just happened to have this out, but our family vision meeting comes up January 1st. And so we're going to go through that and walk through that, and we'll evaluate what all we accomplished, where we missed the mark, highs and lows, celebrations, right? But that's been a big plus for us to try to pursue, because we believe those are the 5 things that give us the closest thing to balance in our life, right?
Those are
And so,
excellent points. Those are excellent points. And I can take some of these things that you're talking about, incorporate them with my children and family. I'll make sure they watch your video as well to learn these
mhm.
other non-negotiables and the 5 Fs that you just mentioned as well. So looking at all of these things, what are some other thoughts you have that you want to share about influencing your children?
Yeah, you talked about tactics, and I'm sitting here because today's been an awesome day, but it's been kind of nonstop. So I didn't get to, I knew that we were doing this, but I didn't really think about it. I was like, well, I mean, I'm a parent. I know what I do, but how do you describe that, right? How do you break that down? And so, when I think about it, obviously, yes is being yes, no's be no's. These are very intentional things that we've done along the way. But I'll tell you something that's been super intentional is my wife and I, we wanted relationships with our children after they left the nest. And my children, when they were young, my son, I was pretty tough. I was very tough on both of my kids, for the record. But I loved them like crazy. And someone told me a long time ago, you can be tough on your kids as long as you love them tougher, right? And I will say that that's what I've done. But part of that is I dated both of my kids.
Hmm.
I started dating my daughter when she was 5. I started dating my son when he was 6, right? And so with that, we would go out on dates, and all I would do on most of these dates is just be curious. Curious on what's going on in their life, curious on where their minds are at, curious on why they're upset, or curious on why they're so happy. But I would just be curious, and I would ask them questions, and we would make it all about them. And even though I worked, especially in my 20s and 30s when my kids were young, I worked a lot of hours, put a lot of hours in. But that's something that I never skipped out on, and I'm very proud that my wife forced me to do it many a times. My wife was like, "You're going on a date. You told him you were going on a date. You're going." I was like, but I got." She says, "I don't care what butt you got. You're going." And I'm so thankful, and that's what a partnership is so important. But going and doing those dates, and then to now see my kids are 22 and 19, and they actually want to come home, and they actually still want to go on dates, which is super cool. And I'm very proud of that my wife and I did that. But the other thing is, having a support staff, raising kids and being a parent, is hard because, I read a book, Leadership. I'm going to promote John Maxwell for a second, but there's a great book called Leadership. And when it comes to, this wasn't about parenting, it was about leadership, but it talked about the power of being candid with your kids, or not, with your employees, and your relationships, and being, and showing care to them too. And so when you're candid and care, like I have very good skills around being candid, right? My wife has very good skills around being care, and showing nurturing, attributes all the time. And the combination of that, right, really helps when you're raising kids, because your kids need both, just like we need both. And me having a spouse that was very nurturing and very caring, allowed me to eventually become more drawn, and become better with empathy and compassion and things of that nature. But I want to really point out that, man, I don't know that our kids our kids would have had a chance if it was just me raising them,
Yeah.
and I didn't have a support. And even for families on here that might, maybe their relationships with their significant other didn't work out, still having someone else that can meet that caring or candor need that we sometimes struggle, because usually it's rare that you have both. Like, at least it was for me. I'll say for me, it was very rare. And as I've gotten older, I've learned how to care more, just due to having a great spouse and a great support and a great number, a great significant other help raising these kids. That was a big impact for my kids, for sure.
Well, that's definitely very positive because again, when there are two parents, it's easier, but on parents as well as for children, because they need, like you said, the candor as well as the caring nature, and that really helps. Obviously, I'm similar in that respect, so we can
Yes.
relate to that very well. Yeah.
So
So,
true.
yeah. So if somebody wants to engage with you, what are some of the things, like how can they contact you? Because you have so many different businesses as well. So what would you like people to know and how to be in touch with you?
Yeah, so I always love to get to know new people, and I love new relationships, and I love to be inspired by people who are doing things right, or people. I also get inspired by people who want to do things right that might not be. And so one of the easiest ways to contact me is going to social media. So you can go to Team Wilson, to our Facebook and Instagram. Team Wilson Real Estate Partners is one way that you can go. I don't know all my Instagrams because I'm not really involved on the social media. I mean, I'm out there, but But I know that that's a great way that I like to stay plugged in. You can also go to one of my favorite websites, which is something that my daughter actually gave me for Father's Day. This is a fun story. So for years and years and years, I've told my kids to go be great every day. Like, I've looked them in the eyes before they head off school, and I'd look at them and I'd say really two things to them. I'd say, go be great. Or if I was leaving to go out of town, take care of your mom for me. Right. And those were two things, but I said it over and over. And when I'd write them notes or when I write them letters, I would end it. And my daughter, who I knew, she was like our rebellious one, and I knew she was going to get a tattoo. And we don't, my wife, my daughter, I mean, my son and my wife and myself, none of us have tattoos, but we knew it was happening. And she turned 18, and for Father's Day, she gifted me a tattoo, which I never dreamed. And she knew how against it I was. Long story short, she had in my handwriting, she had tattooed on her body something that's very private for her. It's not exposed out to the world, but she had "Go Be Great" put on her body for her to see every day in my handwriting, which was super special. So that being said, is that you can jump on and you can go to gobegreat.com, and there's a contact feature on there to be able to contact me, and you can contact me that way. And I would love to reach or share or to talk to anybody that you're touching along the way, man, because you're somebody I've known for, I think, 15 years now. I've known you for at least 15 years, and you have made me a better person, a better husband, and a better parent because of it.
Well, you have give too much credit, so I'll take it only for the reason that you are somebody who feels great about being generous. So I'll let you be generous today with that.
Yeah, thank
You're
you.
being generous to me. So I appreciate that tremendously for you taking the time. I know you had quite a few things packed up, and your assistant was like, there is no way he can find time, but you did. So I,
Mm,
I take that with a lot of gratitude as well in my situation as well. So thanks again, Ben, for coming on, and I look forward to seeing you in person, I'm sure, hopefully soon.
absolutely, absolutely. Have a great day and happy New Year, my friend.
Thank you.
See you.